Hello, I'm Wayne Visser, the founder and director of CSR International, and today we're talking to Leeora Black, who's the founder and managing director of the Australian Centre for Corporate Social Responsibility. Welcome, Leeora. I wanted to start just by asking about the state of CSR in Australia, because I know you've done some research in this area.
That's right, Wayne. CSR is alive and well in Australia. We've been tracking the development of corporate social responsibility practices and the challenges in corporate social responsibility for a number of years now. And our latest study, which we released at our annual conference in February, showed that despite the global financial crisis, CSR has retained its focus and its strength. There was some cost cutting and restructuring in a small number of organisations to cope with the global financial crisis, but by and large people took the opportunity to think a lot more deeply about the relationship between CSR and strategy and to drive some stronger linkages there. We also found this year that the top issues that CSR managers say they will face in 2010 continue to be integrating CSR into organisational strategy and dealing with environmental impacts and climate change. One of the very interesting things that did come through in the survey was the rise in attention to sustainability reporting. We've had a number of major companies producing very good annual sustainability reports for several years now, 7, 8, 10 years, some of them, but it's been a minority practice and we're going to see more attention to sustainability reporting in the future. There's a number of reasons for that. Partly it's the increasing maturation and sophistication of organisational practices generally and the understanding of the need for accountability and the benefits of performance management through reporting. And partly it's the focus of government encouragement, the activities of the Global Reporting Initiative here in Australia, and all of those things come together to put an increased focus on sustainability reporting, with more managers saying that improving their sustainability reporting is a high priority in 2010 than they have said in the past.
What are some of the best practices in CSR in Australia? Some of the things that perhaps the rest of the world might learn from?
One of the things that we do at ACCSR, which I believe is global best practice, is our work with stakeholder research and engagement. We use an approach called the Stakeholder 360, which has been developed by our colleague Dr Robert Boutillier, who lives now in Mexico, and we're the leading global users of that method. The method proceeds from the assumption that organisations and stakeholders are part of a network. They're part of a whole. So typically you would see stakeholder maps looking like a hub and spokes wheel, where you've got the focal organisation at the centre and all of the stakeholder organisations are in some kind of an arrangement around the focal organisation, as if the focal organisation were the sun and everything rotates in orbit in the gravitational pull of that organisation, and in reality that's not the case. There are sometimes some issues for which organisations are in control, but most of the time they're not really in control of the issues that affect them. They're just one of the players in the issue, and they're just one of the players in the network. And being able to understand issues and stakeholders from a network perspective is, I think, the major contribution that we've been able to make to stakeholder engagement practice here in Australia and hopefully beyond Australia as well.
And are there any companies that you think are blazing a trail in this area or other areas?
In the area of stakeholder research and engagement, we've done some work with some wonderful organisations who really do have a very sophisticated approach. Among those organisations would be Alcoa of Australia and Hydro Tasmania more recently. We did some work for several years with Transurban, mapping their stakeholder networks and being able to highlight for them, for example, the emergence of issues 6 to 12 months before those issues hit the newspapers, and allowing them to be more ready than they would have been otherwise for managing the impact of some public issues on their organisation.
Now, one of the areas that Australia perhaps has got a poor reputation is on the issue of climate change. And yet we started to see some changes in that recently Where do you think Australia is at with that issue and how companies are responding?
It's one of the most important issues that corporate social responsibility and corporate sustainability practitioners are dealing with. I'm not quite sure why Australia would have the image of being recalcitrant on these issues. We're more aware, it's more a topic of general conversation here than in other countries that I've been to around the world. But perhaps we have that image because our government's made big promises that it hasn't yet been able to deliver on by comparison with some other countries. I think that large organisations are certainly making a very successful effort at understanding the impact of climate change on their organisations and putting in place strategies to reduce their carbon emissions and reduce their negative environmental impacts. But clearly we've still got a long way to go, and I don't think there's any country around the world that could sit back and say, well, we're doing everything that we need to do on this issue.
Mm. Final question then, what gives you the most hope or what are you most excited about in terms of developments in CSR in Australia?
I see organisational practitioners reaching out to one another and with a strong desire to learn, and there is an abundant desire to keep on growing and learning, and because of that we've been able to see developments like the Graduate Certificate in Corporate Responsibility at La Trobe Graduate School of Management and a number of other university level programs on sustainability. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, people didn't know what they didn't know, but now they know that there's a lot that they don't know, and there's a lot of activity around learning for corporate social responsibility and sustainability, and that's a very optimistic trend.
Well, thanks very much.